Another country being ripped apart by a civil war, with this time it being Sudan. So if you don't know, Sudan's one of the largest and poorest nations in Africa. While it's unclear who fired the first shot, fighting between the government and a paramilitary group broke out on Saturday morning. The capital there, Khartoum, getting rocked by gunfire and explosions straight through Monday as mortar rounds and artillery fire pounded the city. You've got warplanes flying overhead. You can see satellite photos showing smoke rising from Khartoum's airport, the railway authority, the energy and defense ministries, and general command of the army. The violence also spreading out beyond just the capital, with gunmen reportedly looting hospitals, government offices, compounds, and warehouses belonging to aid groups in the UN in the region of Darfur. According to a UN envoy, there were at least 180 dead today, with the head of the doctors union also saying 3 major hospitals had been struck, a 4th was evacuated, and 2 more relocated their patients after backup generators failed, adding that some workers hadn't slept in 48 hours and saying, "We are on the brink of collapse of the entire healthcare system. Supplies are running very low. We issued an appeal asking for intravenous fluids for blood and medicines." Meanwhile, the UN World Food Program temporarily paused its operations on Sunday after 3 of its Sudanese staffers were killed, which is already horrible news, but it's absolutely devastating for the 15 million people who don't have enough to eat, making up a third of their population. Or because, as mentioned, Sudan is extremely poor, with its people on average earning just $750 per year. But as far as this current conflict, it finds its roots in the 2019 political settlement that saw 30-year President Omar al-Bashir ousted from power. Right after months of street protests by pro-democracy activists, the army arrested him and formed a joint civilian-military government. Then in late 2021, the military half of the government seized power in a coup, promising to restore order until a democratic transition could be completed. But since then, Sudan's been run by a council of generals led by the 2 men at the center of this weekend's violence. One, the de facto president and head of the country's armed forces, and the other, that man's deputy and the head of the roughly 100,000-strong paramilitary force called the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, with that group being hugely influential, having intervened in Yemen and Libya, with its leader controlling some of Sudan's gold mines. And its presence as a power center outside of the regular military created tension within the government, though both men signed a draft deal back in December to carve a path towards civilian leadership. But that has clearly fallen apart, with activists saying it elevated the RSF leader to a threat by making him an equal to the president, as well as failing to resolve friction over the planned integration of the RSF into the country's military. So you had nerves already on edge, but then last week, RSF forces redeployed around the country in a move that the army perceived as a threat. And so now, stability looks unlikely to return as both men blame each other for the fighting and both men refuse to negotiate with the other, which is exactly what we saw yesterday afternoon